I want to talk about what's going on in Myanmar. This is actually kind of a bombshell. There's this article from Reuters. I want to show it to you. It's right in the middle of December, right at the end of last year. In Myanmar's Chin state, a grassroots rebellion grows. And this entire headline is an absolute lie, and Reuters themselves will debunk it. Literally right below the headline, the very first picture, the very first caption, it says, what does it say? It says, a Chinland Defense Force fighter poses for a photograph at an undisclosed location near the India-Myanmar border in the northeastern state of Mizoram, India. So it's not in Chin state, it's in India. And if it's in India, it's there with India's support and approval. And so there's nothing grassroots about it at all. And of course, it's not a rebellion. This is a proxy war being waged against Myanmar. Yes, it is people from Myanmar being used as a proxy force, but it is being backed entirely by the US and its allies, including political factions in India, facilitating this. And so this is exactly what the US did to Syria with the help of countries like Turkey and Jordan. This is the US doing the exact same thing, but this time in Southeast Asia, right on China's border, by the way. And they're doing it with the help of India. They're also doing it with the help of the US-backed opposition here in Thailand. And all of the US NED-funded fake fronts here in Thailand are all connected to the ones in Myanmar. And a lot of those ones in Myanmar are actually based right here in Thailand. So this is the US doing this. And this is the US using their allies in political parties across the region to do this. India's involvement in this is not something new. This is something that India has done many times in the past. As a matter of fact, I want to show you this right here. I've shown you this many times before in, for different purposes. This is from the U.S. State Department's official website, state.gov, Office of the Historian, Memorandum for the Special Group Review of Tibetan Operations. And right here, the first paragraph, summary. The CIA Tibetan activity consists of political action, propaganda, and paramilitary activity. Paramilitary activity means they're giving people guns to go into China and kill people. That's what that means. Purpose of the program at this stage is to keep the political concept of an autonomous Tibet alive within Tibet and among foreign nations, principally India. Why India? Because that's where the Tibetan militants were based. They were based there. They would cross over the border. They would kill people. They would destroy things, and then they would run back to India and hide, where China's military couldn't follow them. Right down here it says, this includes bringing 133 Tibetans to the United States for training in political propaganda and paramilitary techniques. So they were training terrorists in the United States, continuing to support subsidy to the Dalai Lama's entourage at Dharamsala, India. So this is where the government in exile was based. And as a matter of fact, Reuters all but says that the National Unity Government, this fake parallel government that wants the US and the world to recognize them instead of Myanmar's current central government, Reuters all but says that they're based on the border inside of India. So think about it. The NUG, the National Unity Government, is telling all of these kids to go out and fight the army and get themselves killed while they're hiding in India, safe and sound, very far away from ever being threatened by their own war that they are waging against their own people. Think about that. And so India has done this before. They have aided the US and its foreign policy objectives in precisely this way in the past, vis-a-vis China in regards to Tibet, and now they're doing the exact same thing in Myanmar. And again, this is all about China. But I want people to be very careful about generalizing in regards to India. It's a huge country, has a very complex political scene, and not everyone is interested in creating tensions with China or being obedient to Washington. So be very careful about how you approach this. Let's continue looking at this Reuters article, though. I want to show you the next picture. 4 fighters from the Chinland Defense Force sit in an interview with Reuters at an undisclosed location near the India-Myanmar border in the northeastern state of Mizoram, India. A Chinland Defense Force fighter who requested that he be identified by the name he uses as a boxer shows a picture of rebels on a mobile phone at an undisclosed place near the India-Myanmar border in the northeastern state of Mizoram, India. I like this one. a Chinland Defense Force fighter who requested that he be identified by the name he uses as a boxer, shows a picture of a rebel at an undisclosed place near the India-Myanmar border in the northeastern state of Mizoram, India. And there he has a working gun. Right there is it looks like an AK-47, and he is in India with his weapon. These are militants training, armed up, and hiding out in India, crossing the border to carry out murder and mayhem in Myanmar, and then slipping back over the border where Myanmar's military cannot follow. This is exactly what was going on in Syria with Turkey's help, with the US ultimately sponsoring and organizing all of it, and now the exact same thing in Myanmar. But let's go through this article. Through these summary points, armed resistance in Myanmar's Chin state started small. Well, it didn't start small, and it didn't start in Chin state. It's in India, obviously, and it's however big or small the US budget and India's support allows. And so they're saying it's growing. But if you're looking at what's going on inside Myanmar, the country is at war with itself. There's death and destruction everywhere. The economy is deliberately being targeted and grinded into a bloody pulp. And so how is this rebellion growing? It's growing because of US and India backing. That's how. That's the only way it could, and that is the way it is growing. Here it says, Army reinforcement suggests military is worried by threat. Of course, if you have a foreign-funded, foreign-armed and backed threat crossing into your territory, you're going to reinforce that area with additional military forces. Common sense. And then here, elected government overthrown in February, protests crushed. And I've mentioned many times before, Aung San Suu Kyi's government was not democratic in any sense of the word. Democracy is a process of self-determination. Aung San Suu Kyi, everything about her and her party were constructed, propped up, and supported by the US government. There are videos of her in Washington, D.C., meeting directly with the National Endowment for Democracy, which built up her party. Her party was actually based in the United States, right outside of Washington, D.C., in Maryland for many years before going back to Myanmar and being installed into power by the U.S. through U.S. meddling. So there was nothing democratic about it at all. And the military in Myanmar had no choice but to overthrow it. It was a client regime being run out of Washington, and compromising Myanmar's sovereignty was Myanmar, if you don't know, it was a colony under British rule called Burma. And so this was the US recolonizing Myanmar. It had to be stopped. And then here, finally, Myanmar junta chief says military committed to peace, democracy, and of course, anyone actually interested in Myanmar's future would be interested in peace. They would not want to fight perpetual war. The only one interested in perpetual war is the United States, and they have demonstrated this all around the world, from South America to Africa, all across Africa, the Middle East, Central Asia, and now in Southeast Asia, without a doubt. What about the U.S. role in all of this? Because they're talking about Chinland Defense Force, the Chin National Front, and then they've got, just like in Syria, they've got the militants, the terrorists that the U.S. is backing and arming. Then they have the fake human rights groups that cover up all of their abuses and then take anything the military does in retaliation to their violence. They take that and they spin it as human rights abuses. So who in Myanmar is doing that, and who funds them? And so they have the Assistance Association for Political Prisoners. So this is a group that Reuters is citing. And I've showed you how Kobo Chi, the founder and joint secretary of the Assistance Association for Political Prisoners, he's literally an NED fellow. Okay, so there's that. Then they have the National Unity Government, and I have shown you how the current Minister of Foreign Affairs for the National Unity Government is actually also a NED fellow. Her name is Zin Mar Aung, and this is her right here. And this is her official page on the NED website. Okay, and then if you keep going down, you have the Chin Human Rights Organization. If you go to the NED's official website, Burma 2020, because they refuse to call Burma by the name the people there actually call it, Myanmar. And if you look for Chin Human Rights Organization, you'll find this down here. human rights monitoring and advocacy for Burma's Chin minority. They don't use the name of the organization because this is something the NED is increasingly resorting to, kind of covering up who they are and aren't funding. But the Chin Human Rights Organization on their own website, they also don't directly admit it. So if you go to their website, they have About Us, and then they have Partners, and then they have Our Funders and Donors, and they don't disclose who actually funds them or donates to them. But here, under this news that they do, this news roundup that they gather news from elsewhere, they admit that they are funded by the National Endowment for Democracy right here. In terms of funding sources, our main funders include the National Endowment for Democracy based in Washington, D.C. They also get money from Canada and Brussels and Sweden and the Netherlands, and then they talk about this group in Thailand, but again, it's just another proxy for the US government and adjacent corporate-funded foundation. So this is what Reuters is telling you. They're telling you every aspect of this conflict in Myanmar is being sponsored by outside interests. It's not an uprising. There's nothing grassroots about it. So their title of this article right here, in Myanmar's Chin state, a grassroots rebellion grows. That's just an outright lie. And their own article completely refutes their own headline. And they're basically telling you they think you're stupid, that you'll read that headline and you'll read an entire article contradicting that headline, but in your mind, you're still going to think all of that adds up to, in Myanmar's Chin state, a grassroots rebellion grows. So be very careful about this. I have people who are, opponents of U.S. foreign policy, and they're still thoroughly convinced that Aung San Suu Kyi was somehow, she was changing sides. She was going to work with China because she signed some deal with China, as if that means anything. And the US is actually the one who overthrew her. And somehow the military is in league with the United States. I want to show you something here that to thoroughly debunk that notion, because I still get so many people who come to me with that argument. This is where Myanmar exported to in 2019. China alone accounts for all of Europe and North America combined. And then in terms of imports, it doesn't even register really. I mean, Europe and the United States, it's completely irrelevant. It's China. It's China and Thailand. And so the military has been running the country for decades. Not Aung San Suu Kyi's client regime. So she had just gotten into power. What is she going to do? She cannot overnight change this. This is not something you can change overnight. This is something that takes time and patience. And this is what Aung San Suu Kyi was going to do. Everyone in her government, everyone around her, her advisors were literally British citizens, Australian citizens. One British citizen was actually working for the Foreign Office while also serving as her advisor. She was not changing sides. She is a US puppet. She always has been. She always will be. This is why the military ousted her from power. This is a pivotal battleground, not just for Myanmar and against US imperialism, but Myanmar is on China's border. It is a key part of China's Belt and Road Initiative. A very key pipeline goes through Myanmar, bringing hydrocarbons from Myanmar's coast to Kunming. So China doesn't have to move hydrocarbons through the Strait of Malacca and waters still menaced by the US military presence in the Pacific and the South China Sea. And so this is what's going on. And if you want to contribute toward rebalancing world power, minimizing the threat the US poses to the world, helping the natural and common sense rise of China, has got the largest population in the world. It should have the largest economy in the world. If you want to be a part of that, you need to understand what's going on in Myanmar, and you need to get on the right side of this debate and start building a consensus against meddling in Myanmar. So I'm going to continue keeping an eye on this. I got all of this information from Samira Khan. So follow her on Twitter. She is one of the only other people I've seen regularly talking about what's going on in Myanmar, talking about it correctly, who knows that this is a US instigated conflict and who has been doing extensive research into all of this. She actually has dug up some other interesting things that I will be doing another video about here very soon. It's going to add on top of this in regards to this Chin uprising and the people who are leading it, and how the US is, In this video, I'm showing you how the US is backing the fake human rights organizations and how the armed militants are in India. Next video, I will show you how they're basically the exact same thing. And so when the US is supporting and giving money to the fake human rights organization, they're also funding the militants. That'll be for the next video. If you thought this video was useful, please like and share it. Think about subscribing. It's free to do and it helps the channel grow. I have a website, newatlas.report. You can find and follow all of my work there. I am also on Twitter at Brian_Berletic. You can find and follow my work there. I'm also on Weibo. This is Chinese social media. All of the links to find and follow my work and also Samira Khan, that will be in the video description below. Also in the video description below will be all of the links that I just discussed and some extra ones as well. There are also ways you can help support my work. And to everyone who has been, whether it's through Patreon month to month or through one-time donations, or even if you're just helping share my work with other people, that helps out a lot. I could not do this work without that. So thank you very much. And as always, thank you for watching.